Oops. Remember, let's see if we can get Val on here. We're just waiting for her. Okay. Oops.
All
Hey,
right.
Val. How you doing?
Here.
There we go. You know what? I'm just gonna switch my my phone here for a second.
Okay.
And I'm glad that it worked. Just hold on 1 second.
Yes.
I was just trying to do a different view this time, but
Okay.
yeah, we'll get started in a second. How are you?
I'm good. How are
You
you?
doing good? I'm doing pretty good. Doing
Good.
pretty good. I'm just gonna adjust things. I was trying out this new stand for today, and it's just it's not stable enough. So yeah, no, I purchased this other one, just trying to have a different angle, and the way it clipped in, it wasn't really working. So
I see. All
yeah.
right. Don't want anybody to tip over mid.
Oh, that's what was happening just before you got on. It was just a little off, and it was tipping over. So
Oh,
we'll
that's
go with
the worst.
Old Faithful, the previous weeks. How was training today? Were you out there today?
I actually was with some kids in the woods, and it's safety first, right? So I had to bump up the schedule by about an hour and a half because we got some pretty severe storms in the area.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
we've had them too lately. We've had a couple of
really,
doozies.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
and
then
they
I'm
come
getting
in
all these
quick.
flash flood warnings, and sure enough, I look out the window, and right across the street, it's like our neighbor's driveway is a waterfall.
Yeah, it's coming for us too. We've had these really strong storms.
Yep.
For less than a half hour, it clears out, but it does quite a bit of damage.
Yeah.
Or it
Yeah.
can.
Oh,
Yeah, good. But it was a good ride with the kids.
absolutely. I love their energy. They energize me. It's just they're so sweet and respectful and so psyched to be outside riding. And
Yeah, it sounds like they're a lot of fun.
they are.
Awesome. So why don't we get started? So welcome everyone. So we have people with us, Val. So
Yep.
as we go through, everyone welcome. So this is our Thursday, Mental Skills Thursday for Headset Sports. I'm Peter Papadogiannis. I am happy to have our guest this week is Valerie Hopkins. And Val's on with us in asking her to come on because you have, based on your experience in sport, a fantastic and really interesting career in regards to the sports that you performed in. And I think we're all going to learn from you. Our listeners, some of your listeners as well, hopefully they came in. And once we're done, it's recorded and we put it on Instagram for people to watch afterwards.
Great.
So it's really interesting how people come afterwards and they'll view. And during our time together, if people have questions, they'll put it into the little comment area.
Great.
So we both see it. So people who are listening, please feel free to ask Val and I any questions along the way. Val, if you see one and I don't get to it, feel free to stop me as I keep talking, and then we'll get to it. And if I see one and it's the right time, we'll answer people's questions.
Great.
Awesome. So both of your sports that we'll talk about today, I was thinking about kind of your career, kind of putting it into two different categories. One is the speed skating career, and then it's a transition to cycling yourself competitively, coaching competitive athletes, and then also your company, your cycling company, and it's Live Power Cycling.
Yes.
Right. So want to take the speed skating part and the cycling part, and then just focus on the mental skills part as we go through those two different parts of your career.
Yeah, great.
Awesome. Can we start with the Live Power Cycling part?
Sure.
And the cycling career?
Yeah, absolutely. What aspect of it would you like me to start with?
Let's go with what got you into setting up the company. So why don't we talk about the company, the cycling, and then we'll transition to the speed skating piece.
Sure. So the company kind of birthed itself out of my desire to bring all of my years of experience as an athlete. I mean, which really started as a child, as a figure skater. I've been an athlete my entire life, and it's like I've been honing these skills for success as an athlete and as a coach in whatever sport I'm working on. And when I finally stopped racing at the end of the 2018 season, I thought, well, what a waste to have all of this knowledge and not share it. I felt obliged to share what I have learned, all of the strengths and hopes and all of the failures. I needed to help athletes and even people who are just aspiring to gain fitness, to get back in the gym. I had to share all of my experience with these people because I knew I could help people. So that was kind of the motivation behind it. And it was like, okay, now how am I going to do that? And I went right to our local clubs and studios, practice, performance, and wellness. I went straight to the owner, PJ O'Clair, and said, I can help you. I can help your clients get fitter on the bike. And I immediately just went to USA Cycling, got the certifications I needed. So I had all my kind of the credentials on top of my athletic prowess, and just made sure I was prepared once she opened her doors to me, and once I opened my doors to cyclists, that I would be ready to take them.
Right. So in regards to the coaching piece, and it sounds like it's different ages of cyclists. For those that just came in, we were talking about just ride you had with younger kids today, but it sounds like it's kids, it's older athletes in regards to young adults, highly competitive as well for some of them.
I train women I used to race against. Helping them get to the level that I left the sport at. I have moms who have kids in college that I train. I can develop a mother who's like, wait, I want to get back to the level that I raced at when I was 30. I can help that 50, 60-year-old woman. And I can help a 6-year-old learn how to ride a bike on a trail. I mean, I'm really hitting all ages.
That's fantastic. And it really just, as you're smiling, you were talking earlier about just the joy in that.
Yeah.
And it sounds from what you're just saying and hearing from you is that giving part means a whole lot in regards to just you as a coach, but also it feels like for you as an athlete too, that you probably had some pretty important people that did that for you as well, it sounds like.
Absolutely. Yeah.
How has the last few months been in regards to health challenges and returning to sport for your various athletes?
Sure. Well, I've just taken on the mentality of let's turn these lemons into lemonade. Here we have been given this time to pause, time to reflect. Let's figure out what your strengths and weaknesses are if we have already, but let's take time to develop those undeveloped strengths. I don't like to even call them weaknesses.
Right.
There's so much that goes into creating a well-rounded athlete that on a regular schedule pre-COVID, people weren't necessarily taking the time to do. I mean, were they taking the time to work on mental toughness? Were they taking the time to develop their flexibility, their mindfulness, yoga, nutrition, strength training? There's so many other facets that are required of an athlete to be well-rounded that you just, in our fast-paced world, people would look away from and say, I don't have time to do that. I'm just going to train. I'm just going to ride my bike. It's like, no, So now I'm making everybody pause, reflect, figure out where they can build from on these undeveloped weaknesses, and use those as training objectives. A lot of my athletes are using races as training objectives, extrinsic goals. Let's look intrinsically and say, okay, what would you like to develop? If it's your FTP, your functional threshold power, if it's how much you can bench press. I mean, all of these goals are completely shifting away from extrinsic to intrinsic.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And it's kind of followed in some of the conversations we've had over the last couple of months. So we started the Instagram live for Headset because of COVID.
Yeah.
Right. And we've been talking to athletes, coaches, athletic directors. And that one piece that you mentioned, I think is extremely important, especially for the return to play. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of athletes are talking about really wanting to get where they were before, mm-hmm. right before everything happened. And so in some seasons were cut short, and there's a lot that they want to be able to accomplish mm-hmm. in a short period of time, where I like where you mentioned about taking the pause to your advantage.
Yes.
Where some don't, right? It's a forcing, right? Yeah. I need to, I must, where you're saying, well, this is something that's unique, but maybe we can use it for long-term gain.
Exactly.
And we can start to develop
mm-hmm.
all the physical, mental, and technical skills.
Yep.
So when we do get to racing, when we do get to playing a game or competition, yep. that you're going to see some of the fruits of your hard work.
Absolutely.
In regards to that pause.
Absolutely.
So I love that you mentioned that, and who knows who's going to be clicking on that button or is with us right now. But mm-hmm. I always think of the young athlete that this is, mm-hmm. I hope this is something that they remember us. And when they come back, they say, all right, let me use the time. I don't have to be performing where I left off. I just got to get myself comfortable and get ready for when I do get back. And I think that's right on.
And imagine, I want them to imagine where they will be, where they will re-enter the sport, what that looks like to them, what that looks like, a more complete package, because they had that time to do their mental toughness training, because they had that time to fine-tune their recovery and their diet and their nutrition, because they had that time to devote an extra 3 hours a week to strength training. Like, what does that complete package look like to them when they return to sport and build that into your weekly routine?
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I almost kind of envision as you're talking that, and some athletes have that. I don't know if you did it when you performed or your athletes do it. It's almost like a vision board. You can have it mentally, or you can have it up there and you're like, here's when we start to, this is what I would like to feel, this is how I'd like to be, but here I am right now. And how do I daily, weekly, get to where I want to be, and really track how you develop. Like, it sounds like to me that with a time off, it sounds like you and your athletes have said, you know, let's use this wisely, and let's track where we are to get us ready for where we want to be in the near future.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
What can I ask you? What are some of the challenges? Like, what, like as you're riding with them, and I'm sure a lot of the work happens off of the bike. What have been some of the challenges? Let's start with the athlete first. What are some of the challenges with the time off? Have the athletes spoken to you about?
Oh, depression. It's been really disheartening to look at your race schedule and see all of your goals that you started working for in last fall or January, all of those races removed from your schedule. And that is devastating to some of my athletes. And I get it. I was very extrinsically motivated. I always wanted to race. I always wanted to compete. And to have that taken out of your life, it's like, now what? What are we racing for? What are we training for? What are we putting all of these hours in for? But if you can get them to find something that makes them, that matters to them, that they want to develop, if it's their functional threshold power, if it's strength training, if it's something, you have to find what matters to your athlete and set new goals for them to work towards while the racing is on hold.
I love that. And what I'm hearing from you is, as a coach, and it's almost like I can feel your athlete, your former, like, again, you're still active, but I can almost kind of see your speed skating self, your cycling self, as the athlete come out, as you're listening to them going, I get it.
Yeah.
right? I can almost kind of feel you without saying it. I can just see you going, yeah, right, you are. And rightfully so. Like, you should be frustrated. You should be sad.
Yep.
There is some grieving. You had this on the schedule. You had this on the schedule, and it's not happening.
Yeah.
But it also sounds like there's that, okay, I'm listening. Here's what can we do next?
Right. Because that is out of our control. The race schedule is entirely out of our control. So let's gain control, come back, look within, find what matters to you, find what makes you tick, what makes you motivated to get out of your bed in the morning and get back on your bike. Find that and set your goals based around those skills.
Hey, and again, sorry to flip back and forth, athlete and coach, but can you put your athlete hat on for a second in some of your experiences as an athlete? That how does it feel to be able to get that control? Like, and we've been talking control the controllables. You can go online and you hear a lot of people talking about it, but now that I have you, I wonder if you can explain what the feeling is as an athlete, once you get that control.
Well, I mean, once you do have a race schedule, that is your plan. That's what your weeks are built towards. That's what your monthly cycle is built towards. That's what your daily cycle is going to be dictated by. So what a gift to have a schedule. I loved like working out my schedule, putting the races, my C races, my B races, my A races on my calendar, and that would just fire me up. Like, okay, this is a really important one. Like, and like just like now it gets my adrenaline running, because that's what you need. If you're going to be competitive and you want to race, that's what drives you, are those dates and those goals, and that the idea of that upcoming tangible event.
Yeah. But for your athletic career and coaching career, your sports that you picked, there's not as many competitions as there are practices. Right, and I'm sure the speed skating part, I have worked with speed skaters in the past and know a little bit about it. The cycling as well. But for your sport, you're not like a hockey player who plays one day and maybe the next.
No.
Right, so maybe kind of help, because I'm sure the practice piece has to become very important.
Yeah, well, you have to enjoy the process of training. If that doesn't make you want to get out of bed and get out there, choose a different sport or just do it recreationally. But I always enjoyed the process of looking at all of my numbers. I'm a very data conscious, goal-oriented athlete. So I had a power meter a lot. Most cyclists these days, if they're racing, they train, even if you're not racing. If you care about making tangible gains on the bike, you need a power meter. That's going to measure how much power you're outputting, and that is a pure number that you can map back your strength to on the bike. And every workout that I did was based on certain power ranges. And if you can't find meaning in that, I don't know, that's just the Bible for most cyclists, is their measurement of power on the bike. It comes down to one number is super important, the number of watts you can hold for 1 hour. That's called functional threshold power, your FTP. You like don't ask athletes what their FTP is. It's like asking somebody what their salary is. That's how important it is. But if you can find something like that matters to you and gets you out of the bed and on the bike every morning, then you're in the right spot.
Yeah. And we have a question from John. We're going to get to it. Hi, John. We'll get to his question. We got to remember that one. But here's one in regards to the functional threshold power piece, is that there's a number, right? So, but to me, that number there's meaning, and then there are layers, right? And the same could be said for any number. And we'll get to mental skills before the end of today with headset. But to me, there's a number that we go for, but then there are layers that have meaning to it, right? Could you help us, especially with the cycling piece? Like, we'll be like, I know the number is that, okay, we don't really talk about it, but we can talk about all those dynamic layers that come underneath it, though.
Okay.
Okay, maybe, and I'll help you out with where I'm kind of going with this, is that even for mental skills, like, there could be like a level of resilience, but resilience has layers to it.
Yeah.
Right? It might be that I know I can think more positively.
Mm-hmm.
I know I can control the controllable. Like,
Sure.
so there might be a resilient
Sure.
score, but there's layers to that
Right.
give it
So
meaning.
so you have your FTP, your number that like represents your level of fitness as an athlete. But components of that are, well, you could be as fit as a fiddle, but if you're not mentally prepared to on race day, if you're burnt out and you don't want to push yourself as hard as you possibly can on race day, it doesn't matter how fit you are. So
Okay.
the mental component is just, I mean, I almost say it's 50-50, 50% mental, 50% fitness, because
Mhm.
what good is your fitness if you are not fresh and ready to race hard once your race day comes?
Right, right. So
Yeah.
those, I love it, right? So those are the controllables. That is the process, right?
Yeah.
Those things that you said that, again, we hope you and I, that people who are listening to us can, when they get back to play, they'll take what Val said and put in their back pocket and use it, or something that we conversed about. And I like that. That's tangible information that I think an athlete can take, is that here's what you're going for, but you have to be mentally ready. You have to be recovered. You
Yes.
have to be committed. You
Yes.
have to, and those are the parts that you can control.
Yes.
And whatever that number is
Mm-hmm.
on that FTP, right? And that's there, but there's pieces to it that they can really control.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And here's John's question. Thanks, John. So he says, Val, what has been the challenges as a coach that you have faced since everything has been shut down?
Well, good, awesome question, John. Thank you. I love it. Um, I think just keeping my riders wanting to care about their numbers now that there's not a race season ahead. And some of them I've had to say, you know what? Don't even look at the numbers. Just ride. Find what keeps you on your bike, gaining fitness every day, and cling to that. For one of my riders, she doesn't want any more testing. She doesn't want to use her power meter. She just wants to ride for fun, because she needs that mental clarity, the mental space that it brings her to daily, so she can be a good mom, so she can be a happy human being. And for me, as a coach who's very numbers driven, I have to listen to that athlete and listen to her needs and know when to not push and say, no, you must ride all of these intervals as exactly as I specified a month ago, pre-COVID. We've got to keep your fitness at these levels. It's like, you know what? No, because I would burn her out if I pushed her, and if I made her take her tests, and if I made her do every single interval I'd hoped for. It's like, okay, this is a fluid, flexible plan. We're going to take it 1 week at a time, 1 month at a time, and work with where you're at mentally, and just keep you riding and keep you enjoying the sport.
Right, right. John has one more for you. So how has your competitive background helped you during this pause?
Oh boy. Well, as an athlete, I've been in all sides of the race. I've been at the back of the pack. I've been at the front of the pack. I've been watching from the sidelines, injured. And I think just having that perspective of having those rough days and knowing they don't last forever, knowing that when you're down and you have a bad race, when you're down because there's a pandemic, nothing is forever. Everything in life changes. Everything is constantly changing, constantly moving, and just don't get stuck in a rut right now. You could take this pandemic and say, "Oh my gosh, my athletic career is over," but that's not resilience. That's not a can-do attitude. Where's your positive attitude? Athletes who win don't think like that. So just turn your hat around and be open to this new format where we're kind of in this loosey-goosey state. We don't know when the first race is going to be.
Right.
And just stay positive. I mean, a positive attitude, it sounds cliche, but a positive attitude is everything.
Yeah, that's very important. And as you're speaking and with John's question, the very best athletes, from my experience, they cope through their perspective, right?
Yeah.
And again, it does sound cliched, and sometimes bringing it forward, But when you hear people who are very successful in sport and outside too,
Mm-hmm.
it is work, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
not the Pollyannish, right, feet in the sky that everything's going to be okay. Like I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
use tangible steps
Yep.
to, if I need to change my perspective
Yep.
and my attitude, I will.
Yep.
Right? It's not like they don't say, well, like I'm not feeling this way. I am.
Yeah.
Well, then what am I going to do about it? And I can see you as a coach and also as an athlete saying, I'm at the back of the pack. What am I going to do with my attitude? I'm at the front of the pack.
Right.
What am I going to do with my attitude? Because it's not always those people who are trying to come from the back of the pack or the middle. It's sometimes being at the front of the pack that needs this sort of coping perspective as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Because they might be the most stressed out ones at the race, right?
Right.
They arrive with all of these expectations, and that's
Yes.
not doing them any good. The one thing that always stands out in my memory is I was lining up. I typically raced criteriums. I was most successful as a bike racer on this course that's about a mile long, and you just whip around it doing these really like tight hairpin turns or S turns. You do that for about an hour, and then the first person to cross the line wins. If you can lap the pack, even better, but that's hard. So I thought, well, I'm going to extend my racing season, and I'm going to do cyclocross, which
Okay.
is
Yeah.
a totally different animal.
Yeah.
And when you start in cross, you are lined up according to your points. When you start, you have no points. You start at the back of the line. So here I am. I've got a number of years as a successful criterium racer under my belt, but I'm starting in a Cat 3 or Cat 4 race at the back of the pack. And I was astounded by what I heard the ladies, the women I'm racing against, the girls, saying. There was so much stinking thinking, negative thinking, excuses, all like just laughing, making fun of themselves with all of that nervous energy. And I was like, why would you say something like that when you're about to go for it and give your all? And that meant that you just don't hear that on the start line when you're called up as one of the fastest racers and you line up at the start. Everyone is silent, they've got their game face on, and they're ready to attack. All positive, right? They're gonna go for it. But at the back of the pack, that's why these people are at the back of the pack. Because the thinking was so toxic, and I couldn't even hear it. I was like, oh my gosh. And as soon as that gun went off, I just left them, shot right to the front, and I didn't have to stay at the back for long. But
Yeah,
that's why you're at the back of the pack.
It almost gave you. It's almost like it gave you confidence, right? If they're thinking like this,
yeah,
and I have this kind of attitude and perspective to go in, it's almost like you have an edge over someone, and it gives you that extra confidence. And you might be already confident, but it's that extra one to just say, I'm going to go for it. And I don't think these competitors can hang with me mentally.
Well, mentally, they're not even ready to win. You've got to go to the race hoping you might win or do just give it everything. Don't start cutting yourself down and saying, just making excuses. That's not positive thinking.
Yeah. And as you're talking about these individuals and your kind of headspace, I think a lot of it comes down to that preparation piece that often it's kind of taken for granted by athletes that they can just show up mentally and physically and it will work for them. Where along that process and getting ready for competition, it needs to be kind of almost like aligned, like that physical and mental need to be kind of in place.
Well, the old adage is failing to prepare is preparing to fail, right? You can't take any race and think you can just wing it. You can't just show up and wing it. I mean, it takes hours, weeks, months of preparation, and you need to plan your race day. I would go through write on a notepad what time I would wake up, like start with the race time and then work backwards to the moment I woke up that day. So, I mean, preparing for that specific morning, if it was an early morning race, meant preparing to eat properly the day before and stop eating at a certain time. So you don't have digestive issue. I mean, the preparation is key. And then that in turn feeds confidence once you're in the scenario. I mean, if you're preparing for a hot day, you don't want to get to the race and be like, oh my gosh, I don't have the socks with the ice in them for the back of my neck. It's 100 degrees, the temperature's climbing. You don't want to be in that situation. So you go right over, you get there, you get to your car, you put your sock around your neck, and you're good. Like, that just gives you confidence, like one less thing to stress about.
Yeah, Val, I'm not sure about the cycling athletes, but for different sports that I work with, and especially the younger ones, we spend a lot of time on what we call a pre-competition plan. And either on a computer, a phone, or a piece of paper, we'll go through a checklist.
Yep.
And you can almost, when you have a checklist for your pre-comp and you go through, again, on the hard copy, you can put a check. But when you know that you have it, right? Like, even though it sounds so simple, like I have my cooling device.
Yes.
I have my nutrition.
Yes.
I'm there at the right time that works for me.
Yes.
Right? And when all those, you check off the boxes, outside of how the competition will be, you feel greater confidence and belief in yourself because you are ready.
Yep, exactly.
And that to me is back to, I can almost envision you at the back of the pack for that one time with these people not having really much. It's almost like they're setting themselves for failure. Like, that negative self-talk is just security for them to have something when it doesn't happen.
Exactly.
Right.
It's that, exactly. Yep.
Hey, we've talked about cycling and we're going to go backwards in regards to your career, but then we'll get to speed skating, but there's a transition between high level speed skating and then into cycling. Like, what got you into a totally different sport after your one sport was over?
Good question, because I swore I would never compete again. I thought at the age of 23, I had felt enough lactic acid in my legs and glutes for a lifetime, and I never needed to feel that feeling again.
Yeah, had enough, right?
Right? At the age of 23. And I think it was probably 7 years before I was ready to do a really hard effort physically on anything, right? And my husband got a road bike, and we had always been mountain bikers. We did a lot of like free riding and stunts, because stunts and free riding is totally different than the pain that you endure pushing your body to its max. And so that was fun. But then once he got that road bike, he'd been saying, you have to ride it, you have to try it. I'm like, no. And then one morning I just took it. On that ride, the local, we call these hard weekday rides. It was usually a local group has a Wednesday night ride. It was called the Wednesday Night Worlds.
Okay.
And they crept up. It was probably 30 or 40 guys and maybe 2 women on the ride. They crept up behind me, past me, and I had never seen such a beautiful peloton in real life. You see it on TV of the Tour de France.
Yeah.
See this live. It was almost like a ghost floating up the hill we were on. Everyone was super smooth, super fluid, and it was so elegant. I thought, wow, I want to ride like them. So of course I tried to catch on. I immediately got dropped, and I was like, that's all it took. It was just a dangling carrot. I'm like, I am going to keep up with you guys one of these days. And that is, it all began. And then I started doing the group rides and really enjoyed the aspect of having to endure that, the same level of pain and suffering as a speed skater, but you're doing it with a group, with people side by side. So, speed skating was an individual sport, so you're always going against the clock. It's a time trial. You are just you and your pair going as hard as you can for 1 minute, 40 seconds, 2.5 minutes, 5 minutes, but it's like as hard as you can go alone. Cycling, you don't have to go as hard as you possibly can for the entire race, for the entire ride. You're allowed to sit on a wheel, catch your breath, recover, and just stay there if you're not ready to go hard and go on the front and take a pull. It's a totally different dynamic. So people started asking me to race on their team, and then once I started doing that and having like a team support me during a race, that was so welcome. It was so much more friendly.
Did they know your background? Did they know your background from speed skating? Did they kind of know so they kind of knew your background in regards to sport?
It's such a small sport for women that when you're a woman and you show up in a group ride and you're able to keep up, they're like, well, why are you able to keep up? And I had to say, well, I was a speed skater.
Gotcha.
I was on the U.S. team. They're like, oh, you're a national team member, then you should be that fast. I'm like, whatever.
Yeah, right. Oh, it's so again, and that might be another Instagram live for us to just talk about those dynamics in regards to gender and sport and the different. But so, and I didn't ask you this before, kind of getting ready. So, what were the distances in speed skating that you raced?
Well, I was a middle distance. I was considered an all-rounder because I was not a pure sprinter, and I was certainly not a fabulous 5K racer. My best were the mid distances, 1,000 meters and 1,500 meters.
Okay.
Yep. But I mean, yeah, my sprinting, Bonnie Blair, when I was racing, she was the like creme of the crop. You don't get better. If you're beating Bonnie Blair, you're the best in the world. So, and I was always compared with her, and her coach was my coach. So
Gotcha.
it was pretty clear I was not a sprinter, a pure sprinter. But then as I would do Olympic team trials or nationals, and I would creep up on the leaderboard from year to year to year, it really became clear that my 1,000 meters and 1,500 meters were my strongest suits.
Gotcha. Can I ask in regards to those two in particular, what would be a mental skill or mental skills that would be different than maybe some of the other the sprinters versus the longer? Because I hear this a lot in swimming too. You have the sprinters, you have the long distance, and you have the kind of the middle, the mid distance ones. I always I find all of them fascinating. But what would be the mental skills?
The tough one about especially the 1,500 meters is you almost start out kind of sprinting, but you have to save enough to do the full 2.5 laps.
Okay.
So when there's one lap to go, it is the longest lap of your life. If you're on a good one and you're really pushing, you are going as hard as you can. That final lap takes so much mental toughness.
Yeah.
And you just really, before the start, preparing yourself for that. You can't be dreading it. You have to accept the pain you're about to put yourself through and work with it, work in it. And I'm constantly saying that even when I'm teaching like a cycling class. It's like, okay, this is gonna hurt. We only have 3 more minutes. Accept it, work with the lactic acid, breathe through it. It will be over. Time only goes forward.
Yeah, no, and you're like, this is where you mentioned it earlier, the 50-50, and I will almost say, like, for the mental skill for those moments, it almost becomes more important. Like, again, there's so many times where the physical is more important than the mental, but it seems like in those situations, you really have to work at doing that.
Yeah, like, you have to be ready to suffer. If you don't bring it to the line with that attitude, you're just going to give it everything you've got, and you're going to ignore the screaming of your legs. You are going to push through it in that state, or you won't succeed.
But this is where, and again, I'm thinking about young athletes, and that what you're saying, like, that takes work to be able to embrace. Is there anything to give to any of the listeners or people who will be watching this? Like, how do you embrace that fatigue that comes with sports?
Just know. Oh gosh, I mean, I could say it as a mom. If you've had children, you know you can end the pain if you want during a race. But if you end that pain, there goes your race. So just embrace it. Push. Keep pushing. It's almost over. If you can just suffer for another 15 seconds. You look at the clock. You're looking at your lap times. And you're like, all right, I'm at 1:31. I've got 32 seconds to go. Just 32 seconds. And then you come back around the backstretch and you see your coach with a lap card, and he looks at your and you look at your split. Just cling to any kind of positive thought that's going to get you through those final few seconds, that last minute.
Yeah, I love it.
Positive, cling to it and use that.
I love it. Yeah. In my work with athletes, especially the endurance athletes, we always talk about images, self-talk and images, but you have to work on what those are. For Val, it could be different from Peter, that could be different from John, right? But you have to have those images and those words at the right time. And this is beautiful, right? And I hope people and athletes are listening. Like, it's broken down by time. Like, it's 30 seconds left. I do this.
Yes. Yep.
It's 15
Yep.
minutes. I know my
Yep.
coach is there. I do this. There's
Yep.
5 seconds left. I
Yes.
do this.
Yes. And you also have to prepare for what you don't want to see. If, as a speed skater, you get your lap cards, you see what your split was for each lap. If you see a number that is not as fast as you wanted it to be, you can't let that plant a seed of negativity in your brain. You've got to let that fire you up, get you pissed, get you angry, tap into whatever emotion is going to make you not give up, to continue to work hard, to go harder, to save that race.
Yeah, to me, what you're saying, and just kind of putting some words, it's contingency planning based on where you're at.
Yes, yes.
And the same could be said for you looking at a number, and it could be your best lap ever.
Yeah, yep.
Right.
And even so, if you see your best lap ever, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get a PR, a personal record, a PB, personal best. Use that to fight even harder, to push even harder. Like, see, behind all of this is just the power of positive thinking. You have to have a can-do attitude. No negativity, no stinking thinking. It's powerful, positive thoughts.
Yeah, and to add it, and again, different sports, I tell people, if they do come, if you're in a different sport, if they do come in, you got to go back to what you said. You got to acknowledge it, you got to accept that it's there, and you got to move forward with that plan. It's always shortening the time, right? You always shorten that amount of time to get you free to perform. 100%, 100%.
Absolutely.
Hey, we've been talking about mental skills and the sport. We are on a Headset Instagram Live. So for those that don't know, so Headset is a customized application and system that myself and a few colleagues have created for competitive athletes. And a question for you in regards to your athlete hat first, and then we'll move on to the coach hat, is how could you have used something like this when you were performing? Because I know we didn't have it.
Right. No, I would have loved someone and something to help hold me accountable for what kind of mental preparation I'm doing. I mean, I would just read a sports psychology book. When we were training at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs, we could go live and have an appointment with a sports psychologist, but there was no follow-up. There was no goal setting, nothing tangible that I could work on and like put into a weekly schedule. There was no weekly workouts for me to mentally like work on.
Right.
So this would be tremendous help as an athlete. I mean, my coach would just tell me, oh, go see the sports psychologist, or, oh, you're injured, well, get better, but not addressing like my mental state, or it was just far less advanced than, I mean, we didn't have apps back then, but this would have been tremendously helpful.
Yeah. And like you're saying, we didn't have others who kind of could help guide us as well. Right. So, and that was, and Val, I remember I played hockey at a pretty high level, and my coach would always say, get ready, focus. And I didn't like, where's the plan, coach? Like, we have a plan. We have a plan for on the ice. We have a plan for nutrition. We have a plan for showing up at the rink and going through plays and systems. But there was no plan for this. And that's a big reason for us creating this, is that to create plans for people, and we're all different. And that's a big reason for creating this, is that to give people a plan that they can use that's their own, and then be able to implement it. And that's a pretty important part for any developing athlete, young and old. I think having that plan is extremely important.
Absolutely.
Can I ask you the same question as a coach? Like, how can a coach bring this forward to his or her athletes?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I would love to have all of my athletes on your app. That would be tremendously helpful. Let's get that. I mean, and here we are. This is a perfect time to add something where we're in this pause for game day. Our races are all canceled. Why aren't we using something like this app so we can track your mental state, track your goals, do some mental skills training? I mean, this is the time to add something like this app to the athletes' lives.
Yeah, I agree. And And it really is doing the work now that we have a little bit more time, and as we
Mm-hmm.
return, which will be a little different feeling than we are now.
Mm-hmm.
But once you have this in place, then once
Yep.
you start to play,
Yep.
those things will be already established, right? It
Yep.
becomes that routine and that
Yep.
preparation where you don't have to figure it out, especially when it's competition time. You mentioned this right at the very beginning. You're going, right? You're
Yeah.
going from, and you mentioned with your athletes, you're riding, all these dates are circled with competitions, and that's not the right time to start working on these. It
No,
is
no.
time like now where you can really start to put a plan together
Yep.
with headset and your coach to be able
Yes.
to be prepared for when you play.
It all goes back to training smarter. Now we have the time to step back, evaluate, move forward, and train smart. And this falls right in line with that plan.
I love it. I love it. And I'm gonna put it back out to before we conclude. I want to kind of put out to anyone listening if they have any questions for us to let us know, and we'll get to them. But I want to do one more so put it out there for you in regards to your business. So the Live Power Cycling website
Sure.
is out there for people to look
Live
into.
Power Cycling. Yep, it's livepowercycling.com. Live without the E. My middle name is Livingston. That's where it came from. You can
Okay,
see
so
the services that I offer on it. And you won't see a schedule of my classes. You will find a contact form. Definitely fill it out. I check those every day. I get notified right away if somebody follows through and clicks submit. Send me any questions about my programs, my methodology, my availability for coaching, for personal training, kids classes. It's
yeah.
not going to go to cyberspace. It goes straight to me.
Awesome. And I'm glad you brought the part up about just the strength and conditioning outside of cycling. So
Yeah.
that's where a big space for you, but that's not the only space, right? So
Right. Yeah, I'm a strength and conditioning coach, a personal trainer. I'm doing all of my sessions live. I work with my private clientele on one-on-one sessions live through Zoom. I also teach cycling classes live on Zoom. I also teach group fitness classes live on Zoom. And the only thing I do in person is mountain biking with any age. I've got adult classes and kids classes in the woods.
awesome. And we'll on Headset Sports, so through Instagram, through our LinkedIn, through Twitter, so just through our channels, we're going to put that out there. So if you don't have it and you haven't written it down, we'll put that out there. And I'm going to link the mental skills part. So
Awesome.
you're going to have the physical coach, but then you have someone who's been through this so often that the mental skill side too, you're a good person to also help with that in regard to that kind of mental physical development piece. So
Yep.
yeah, I'm just thinking there's so many things that we've talked about. I almost have to we might have to transcribe this and put it up somewhere to get like almost like these golden nuggets to leave with for people, because
Right.
you've highlighted so many important parts to what's going on now, what's going to happen with return to play, but also when people start to compete and perform in their sport a little bit more competitively. I think a lot of the things that we talked about will be so important to remember and to plan for. So I thank you so much. I hope to do this again. I know you're super busy, and we'll get even busier once everyone is back, but it'd be great to have you on again in the near future.
Me. My
You're
pleasure.
welcome.
Thank you so much,
Yeah,
Peter.
we'll stay in touch. Yeah, thank you so
Okay.
much. All right,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye,
Appreciate it.
everybody.
Thanks, Val. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.